Intro word for word perfection. Welcome to True Stories. In today's video, we're stepping into the fire of rejection, heartbreak, being overlooked, disrespected, ghosted, undervalued, dismissed, and even mocked. But instead of letting the flames consume us, we're going to learn how to walk through them and come out stronger, sharper, and more dangerous on the other side. Because this isn't just about surviving rejection. This is about using it, mastering it, turning it into your most powerful advantage. Inspired by the enduring wisdom of the Stoic philosophers, especially Marcus Aurelius, we're going to uncover 13 raw, real, and ruthless lessons on how to turn rejection into rocket fuel for your purpose. Have you ever had a door slammed in your face, only to realize later it was the best thing that ever happened to you? Have you ever chased someone's approval, only to discover that walking away from them gave you more peace than their presence ever did? Good. Because in this video, we're not just going to talk about how to cope with rejection. We're going to teach you how to weaponize it. Every no you've ever received, every cold shoulder, every betrayal, every time you were ignored, denied, overlooked, we're going to flip all of that pain into a blueprint for transformation. This isn't theory, this is truth. This is practical, powerful, everyday philosophy. So if you've ever been underestimated, rejected, or forgotten, this one's for you. Let's begin. 1. Ignore them. 2. If someone despises me, that's their problem. My only concern is not doing or saying anything despicable. Marcus Aurelius. The first rule of mastering rejection is simple. If they ignore you, ignore them right back. Not out of spite, not out of pettiness, but out of principle. When someone decides to disregard your presence, it's not your job to convince them of your worth. It's your job to remember it. We often waste emotional energy trying to figure out why someone ignored us. Was it something I said? Something I did? Did I not matter enough to them? Let me be blunt. It doesn't matter. Because the moment you start internalizing someone else's indifference, you start bleeding your power. When you ignore someone who ignores you, it's not emotional detachment. It's emotional discipline. It's choosing your peace over their validation. It's standing tall in the silence and letting your confidence speak louder than any plea ever could. Here's how you do it. Don't respond to the cold shoulder with desperate warmth. Don't chase conversations that aren't being returned. Don't twist yourself to fit into spaces that refuse to welcome you. Instead, do the opposite. Pour yourself into your craft. Immerse yourself in the things that set your soul on fire. Show love to those who do show up for you. Because every second you spend chasing someone's attention is a second stolen from your own growth. Rejection isn't always personal. Sometimes it's just misalignment, and other times it's protection. A divine detour keeping you from people or paths that would have broken you if you stayed. Let them ignore you. Let them walk away. Let them sleep on your value. You just make sure you never do the same to yourself. 2. Don't react emotionally. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. Here's the hard truth. The emotional reaction is what hurts the most. It's not always the rejection itself. It's what you tell yourself about the rejection. They ignored me, so I must be unlovable. They chose someone else, so I must be replaceable. They didn't reply, so I must not be good enough. That internal monologue, that's the real damage. The Stoics knew this better than anyone. They taught that pain doesn't come from external events, but from our interpretation of those events. You didn't get the job? That's not inherently bad. They stopped texting you? That's not inherently painful. The pain arises when your ego steps in and writes a story around it. A story about not being chosen, not being worthy, not being loved. So what's the answer? Emotional control, not emotional suppression. Not numbness, but mastery. When rejection shows up, Your ego will want to lash out. You'll want to argue, defend yourself, prove your worth, post on social media, make them see what they're missing. Don't. Instead, take a breath. Ask yourself, what am I making this mean? Realize, that pain isn't the truth. It's just your current lens. Detach from the story and return to the facts. The facts are, you're still breathing, you're still growing, and no one's opinion has the power to define your identity unless you hand them the pen. Emotional control is your superpower. It's what separates the reactive from the resilient, the desperate from the dignified, the broken from the reborn. Next time rejection comes knocking, don't open the door with emotion. Greet it with self-awareness, and watch how quickly it loses its power over you. 3. Remove them from your mind. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. Marcus Aurelius. There's a truth we don't talk about enough. The most dangerous place to keep someone is in your head. You can block their number, delete their pictures, stop texting. But if you keep replaying the rejection, the hurt, the insult, you haven't moved on. You've just changed platforms. To truly overcome rejection, you have to evict it from your mind. Here's how. Feel it fully. Don't pretend you weren't affected. Feel the sting. Let it burn through you. Let the truth of the pain rise to the surface, then release it. See the rejection for what it is, not what your ego wants it to be. Often rejection isn't about you at all. It's about timing, preference, chemistry, or even the other person's fear. Let it be about them and stop internalizing everything. Fill the mental vacuum. The mind abhors emptiness. If you remove the thought of someone, you have to replace it with something better. New skills, new goals, new memories, new people. Surround yourself with mirrors, not magnifying glasses. A magnifying glass will blow your flaws out of proportion. A mirror will reflect your true self. Spend time with those who remind you of who you are, not who you weren't enough for. And most importantly, shift the narrative. What if this rejection wasn't an insult, but an invitation? An invitation to rediscover your worth, reinvent your goals, reclaim your path. Some people reject you because you're no longer small enough to fit their narrow world. That's not a loss. That's a sign you're growing. So don't just delete the contact. Delete the mental loop. Replace it with peace. Replace it with purpose, because the only person who belongs in your head is you. 4. Show them what they rejected. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius. Here's the most poetic revenge. Become exactly what they were too blind to see. But let's be clear, this isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. When someone rejects you, the small part of you wants to show them what they missed. The evolved part of you wants to show yourself what you're capable of. There's a difference. One is ego-driven. The other is soul-driven. When they left, when they denied you, when they passed on your offer, your presence, your heart, let that become your fuel. Let it drive you into the gym, into the books, into the studio, into the silence of focused self-construction. You don't need to post it. You don't need to text them. You don't need to circle back with a look at me now. Just become. Become so calm, so focused, so transformed that they wouldn't even recognize you if they passed you on the street. Let your work speak. Let your glow speak. Let your aura, the one they dismissed, now walk into every room before you even say a word. Because here's the truth. They didn't reject the full you. They rejected a version of you, often the unfinished one. And that's okay. You're under no obligation to remain the person they walked away from. In fact, you shouldn't. You owe it to yourself to become the kind of person even you would choose. And that is the ultimate power. 5. Never explain yourself. When someone does wrong, it's because they don't know any better. If they did, they wouldn't. Marcus Aurelius. Let me say something harsh but necessary. If someone misunderstands you, let them. You don't have to break your character to protect your image. When people reject you, they'll often build a narrative around you that makes them feel better about walking away. She was too intense. He was too clingy. They were too much. They won't always tell the truth. They'll tell their version of it. And you? You'll be tempted to explain, to clear the air, to justify your heart, your actions, your passion, your love. Don't. Explanations can become chains. The more you explain, the more you hand over power, trying to rearrange someone's perception that was never rooted in truth to begin with. Here's the Stoic mindset. Let your actions explain you. Let your life become your counter-argument. Let your peace be your loudest response. You don't need to correct every story they tell. You just need to live in such a way that the real ones feel the difference. Because when you stay silent, not out of weakness, but from grounded strength, you teach people how to treat you. You teach them that your time is too valuable for emotional clarifications. Your self-worth isn't up for debate. Your truth doesn't need subtitles. Your life is the message. And if someone can't hear it, they're not the audience. 6. Silence is the ultimate power move. How much time he saves who does not look to see what his neighbor says, does, or thinks. We live in a world where noise is mistaken for power. Everyone's posting, reacting, commenting, explaining. But the most powerful people? They say nothing. They move in silence. They don't announce their comebacks. They become them. When you get rejected, your first instinct might be to respond, to clarify, to prove, to get one last word in. But silence. Silence is a language of the strong. It says, I don't need to defend myself. I'm not shaken by your opinion. I'm too focused to lower my voice to the volume of your doubt. Silence creates mystery. Mystery creates curiosity, and curiosity turns the tables. When you go quiet after rejection, it unsettles people. Not because you're trying to manipulate, but because your lack of reaction breaks the cycle of emotional dependence. They expected a plea. They got presence. They expected a meltdown. They got maturity. They expected noise. They got nobility. And deep down, they'll start to wonder, why didn't he respond? Why didn't she care? Did they even notice? Let them wonder. Your silence is the new standard. It forces people to speak to you through actions, not apologies. Through presence, not pity. And while they're wondering, you'll be working, building, healing, evolving, until the only sound they hear is the echo of the door you closed behind you. 7. Make peace with being misunderstood. Don't waste the rest of your time here worrying about what others say about you unless it's truly for the common good. Marcus Aurelius, if you want to be truly free, here's what you must accept. You will be misunderstood. You will be rejected not because you were wrong, but because you were real. You will be judged not for your flaws, but for your authenticity. You will be disliked by people committed to misunderstanding anyone who doesn't mirror their worldview. And that's okay. The moment you stop chasing universal approval is the moment you start living in universal peace. Being misunderstood is part of being original, part of being deep in a shallow world, part of being clear in a culture addicted to noise. Rejection often comes not because you're lacking, but because you're too much of something, too intense, too honest, too quiet, too ambitious, too thoughtful, too different. But guess what? The world doesn't need more copies. It needs more courage. And courage looks like this: saying what needs to be said, even if it offends. Walking away when it's easier to beg. Creating alone when everyone else is conforming together. Holding your standards even when you're the only one doing so. Let them misunderstand you. Let them label you. Let them write you off. Just make sure you don't follow suit. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be true. And if truth comes with rejection, so be it. Because peace is not found in being understood. Peace is found in being yourself, loudly, silently, unapologetically. 8. Cut off who you thought you needed. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Seneca Rejection has a strange way of revealing something you couldn't see when you were in it. You never actually needed them. You only thought you did. You built your identity around their validation, their presence, their attention. But the rejection? It was your rescue in disguise. Because when you stop clinging to people who were never meant to stay, you finally create space for the person who's always been trying to emerge, you. Most of us don't fear loneliness. We fear losing familiarity. That version of you that needed their approval, that's the version that's dying. And, as painful as it is, you need to let it. Because that attachment was never about love or connection. It was about emotional survival. It was about fear dressed up as loyalty. Rejection pulls the mask off. It shows you who was riding with you for the comfort, not the character. It reveals who was there for your potential, not your presence. And most importantly, it highlights how much of you was still dependent on them. But when you cut them off, not just physically, but emotionally, energetically, spiritually, something wild happens. You reclaim time. You reclaim power. You reclaim clarity. You stop auditioning for roles in lives that were never built for you. You stop explaining your worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop waiting to be chosen, and you choose yourself instead. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. Clear on who you are. Clear on what you deserve. Clear on who no longer belongs in the story you're writing. Cut off the version of you that thought they were the answer. Because now, you're becoming your own solution. 9. Outgrow who you used to be. You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire. Seneca. Let's get brutally honest. Sometimes the rejection wasn't just them walking away. Sometimes it was the universe saying, "You've been pretending for too long. Pretending to be okay with less. Pretending that your smallness was humility. Pretending that fitting in was the same as being accepted." But rejection? It breaks the performance. It forces you to look in the mirror and realize something uncomfortable. You've outgrown the version of yourself that tolerated that. The version of you that begged, that chased, that settled, that explained, that made excuses. That version got you here, yes, but it won't take you further, and now it's time to shed. Shedding feels like loss, but it's actually alignment. Alignment with who you were always meant to be. It's the moment you stop shrinking to keep people comfortable. The moment you stop editing yourself to fit into conversations that drain your energy. The moment you stop trying to convince others you're worthy. And instead, start behaving like it. Rejection often hits hardest when it challenges the identity we clung to. But that's exactly the identity you're meant to leave behind. Let them reject the old you. That version was only a stepping stone. You don't need revenge. You don't need approval. You don't even need closure. You need evolution. And evolution requires endings. Endings you didn't ask for. Endings that feel like betrayal but are really breakthroughs. This is how you outgrow the need to be understood. You start becoming someone so true, so whole, so unshakable, that the old you wouldn't even recognize what you've become. And that's exactly the point. 10. Pain rebuilds you from scratch. Fire tests gold. Suffering tests brave men. Seneca. There's a silent moment that hits after rejection. After the doors close, after the friends leave, after the love fades, after the opportunity is denied. And it's just, You. Number staring at your phone. Lying in bed wondering how it all fell apart. That's when you realize this pain isn't here to break you. It's here to rebuild you. But here's the catch. It doesn't rebuild you automatically. You have to cooperate with the pain. You have to surrender to the lessons it brings. Rejection burns. Yes. But like fire refines gold, pain refines your soul. It strips away the illusions. It cuts through the distractions. It exposes every emotional weak spot you've been avoiding. You start seeing where you abandoned yourself to be loved, where you overextended to be chosen, where you settled to feel safe, where you ignored your own intuition just to avoid being alone. And now you're forced to sit with yourself, to face the silence, to ask real questions. Who am I without them? What do I believe in without external approval? What do I want when nobody's watching? Pain turns you inward, and inward is where the transformation begins. This isn't about bouncing back. It's about burning down the facade and rising up as something real. So cry, break, scream if you have to, but then build. Build slowly, brick by brick, value by value, discipline by discipline. Because the version of you that rises from this, that version doesn't need validation. That version walks alone. That version is not just healed, they're reborn. And that's what rejection really gave you. A chance to start over. Not from scratch, but from experience. 11. They were never your people. The soul becomes dyed with the colour of its thoughts. Marcus Aurelius. You spent so long trying to keep them, to be enough, to do more, to fix what wasn't yours to fix. But here's the truth. They were never your people. If they were, they wouldn't have walked away when you were most vulnerable. They wouldn't have disappeared when all you needed was someone to stand still. They wouldn't have made you feel like love was something you had to earn with perfection. Real ones don't flinch when you're messy. They don't retract when you're honest. They don't treat your depth like it's too much. But because you never had that, you learned to overfunction, to perform, to chase, to become palatable in the hope they'd stay. But they were never built to hold you. That's why they left. That's why it ended. That's why the door closed. Not because you weren't enough, but because they weren't capable. They couldn't meet you at the level your soul was reaching for. They couldn't see the vision you were designed to walk into. They couldn't hold space for the you that was evolving. And that's okay, because what you didn't realize while you were trying to prove yourself is that your people? They don't need convincing. They don't just tolerate your truth. They treasure it. They don't just hear you. They understand you. They don't just stick around when it's easy. They stay when it's hard. But first, you have to stop auditioning for the wrong ones. You have to be willing to be rejected by the people who don't see you, so you can finally be revealed to the ones who do. You don't need more followers. You don't need more approval. You need more alignment. And alignment begins the moment you stop trying to fit in and start standing as who you really are, even if that means standing alone. 12. Rejection is clarity in disguise. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Marcus Aurelius. Let's be clear. Rejection didn't break you. It revealed you. It didn't destroy your worth. It destroyed the illusions that were hiding it. Because every time someone walks away from you, every time you're denied, every time it falls apart, you're given a gift. Clarity. Clarity about what's not working. Clarity about who isn't real. Clarity about where you've been betraying yourself just to be accepted. You wanted comfort. But life gave you vision. You wanted connection. But life gave you discernment. Rejection forces you to sit with reality, not fantasy. It forces you to see what you didn't want to admit. That they weren't who you thought they were, that you've been ignoring red flags for too long, that you were settling for almosts, when you were built for alignment. And when the emotional fog clears, what you're left with isn't heartbreak, it's truth. Truth about who you are, truth about what matters, truth about where you're going. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it's lonely. Yes, it's raw. But nothing gives you more power than clarity. Because clarity makes you dangerous. You stop second-guessing yourself. You stop waiting for permission. You stop watering yourself down. You stop trying to fix what's not yours to fix. And instead, start building what can't be taken from you. That's the gift rejection gives when you stop resenting it. A life built on what's real. No more guessing, no more performing, just clarity. And clarity is freedom. 13th, rejection is direction. He who is brave is free. Seneca. Here it is, the final truth, the one people resist the most, because once you embrace it, you can never be the same again. Rejection is direction, not failure, not punishment. Direction. It's life saying, not this way, there's something bigger, something better, something that actually fits. That job you didn't get? It would have kept you small. That person who ghosted you? They couldn't have loved the real you. That door that slammed in your face? It was leading you off purpose. And you know what? You were never meant to be liked by everyone. You were meant to become someone who doesn't need to be. The pain? It wasn't a dead end. It was a detour. And now that you've lost what you thought you needed, you're finally free to go after what was always meant for you. This is where everything shifts. Rejection becomes fuel, pain becomes data, loneliness becomes a signal, not of abandonment but of redirection. You start building in silence, you start evolving in the dark, you start creating from the emptiness. And from that comes focus, from that comes discipline, from that comes power. The rejection didn't delay your destiny. It protected it. Because now you don't move to be accepted, you move to be aligned. Now you don't react emotionally, you respond intentionally. Now you don't beg for direction, you become the direction. You're no longer guessing who you are, you're walking in it. Final note, from rejection to rebirth. You thought rejection was the end, but it was the beginning of boundaries, the beginning of standards, the beginning of truth. You didn't get what you wanted, because life was making room for who you were becoming. And who you're becoming. They don't chase, they don't beg, they don't break. They build, they become, they belong to themselves. Rejection is never the end, it's the initiation. Welcome to your rebirth. This is True Stories.